All right, guys, happy Tuesday. We're going to be talking about Facebook groups. And so if you're just jumping on, go ahead and let me know where you're logging in from. Always love to know what churches are jumping in, where you're coming in from. And then let me know if you've had your coffee this morning. What did you order this morning? You might go to Starbucks. I unfortunately have not had coffee this morning and just drinking the water right now. So I don't know. I'm kind of breaking a rule of going live without being fully caffeinated. So yeah, let us know. We're going to get started here in a second. We're talking all about Facebook groups today. Mindy's joining us from Florida. Hope it's warm there. Looking forward to. I'm going to be out in California here in a couple weeks at the eChurch Summit. So pumped about that conference. Pumped about some warm weather. Jim joining us for Virginia, Ken, South Carolina. Man, have you guys had your coffee today? Are you fully caffeinated? Uh, oh, man. Nathan Teagarden, what's up, man? I saw your guys' date night promo. That looked pretty sweet. I was wondering if that was you in the picture. So, guys, we're going to be talking all about Facebook groups. We've been doing a couple of these conversations inside the Church Marketers group. So you've probably seen some of these thoughts if you're a part of that group. And we're going to be going deeper. We've got a list here of about 12 questions that I'm going to be diving into. If you've got questions, I'll try to get to them as well. So put those in the comments below. Like if you're just jumping in and you saw the list of the questions from the email I sent, then put your question in there. Hey, Christy, how are you doing? A lot of familiar faces jumping in here. This is going to be a lot of fun. And let me just give you a heads up real quick too. I want this to be a conversation. Because that's what's cool about the body of Christ and all of us coming together is we can learn from one another. So like there's going to be a lot of people watching this. And so we can shoot ideas back and forth. What's working for your church? What's not working? What are your pain points? What have you figured out that we can learn from? So this is best, I think, when it's going to be a conversation amongst churches at this point. What I'm doing is Facebook groups was voted the number one topic that our church marketers wanted to see a course in for Church Marketing University. So I'm compiling all my thoughts and going to be doing a course. It's kind of a step-by-step on how to do best practices for groups. But at this point, we're still kind of doing the raw kind of ideas and kicking around what's working because groups has been a major shift. So let's jump into this and explain the background real quick. We've already done a couple videos on the big shift from Facebook 2018. It's really started back in 2017. And honestly, it started when Mark Zuckerberg shifted the very mission of Facebook. So I don't know if you guys remember last summer, the original mission of Facebook was to bring the world together. And here's what happened, guys. They realized that they were successful, that they had brought, in all reality, pretty much brought billions of people together. And then one of my coaches, John Eric Mosler, a friend and coach for Social Coach, said this. They brought the world together. Then they realized it was a bad thing. Facebook was successful in their mission and realized, oh my word, this is actually a bad thing. Because what happened is when you bring the world together and you put all these people in a room, it takes about 2.5 seconds for an argument to break out. And then like people are overturning tables and political commentary. And so it just gets ugly. And so I think Facebook, if you realize they're the way that they fund their platform and they make money, it's through ads. Okay. So that for them to make money and to be successful, people have to enjoy their platform. The more that they enjoy Facebook, the more time they spend on Facebook, the more money Facebook makes, the more inventory they have to sell to businesses, okay? So that's how the game works. So if Facebook turns into this big fight, nobody wants to go. They stop, they abandon their platform. Facebook doesn't get to make money, and that becomes the problem. So and I think that's one little thing what happened, okay? So they realized this is not good. What we have created ultimately is not going to be a good thing long term. So Mark Zuckerberg came out last summer and changed the mission of Facebook. And the big thing that it shifted to was towards groups. Because here's what they realized. If you put the whole world together, fights break out. If you put friends together, then you develop what Mark will call tight-knit communities. And that actually can be a really beautiful thing. So the difference between looking at social media as this place to go fight and complain and argue, and looking at it as a place to come together into these tight-knit communities. So the first thing that they started pouring time and energy to was around this idea of Facebook groups. Instead of social media being this wild, wild west of everybody coming together, it was like, hey, what if we built this around more like groups where we could have people in these communities? And so there started to be a shift in Facebook's approach and pushing people, highlighting more posts coming in and out of groups. And then in 2018, for a lot of people following this whole shift, it wasn't a big surprise, but Facebook dropped this huge bomb that essentially they're starting to get rid of posts from business pages. And that would include churches. So they're saying they're rolling this out in 2018. So the problem is your church could be posting on social media and about 0 people see it. So that's the problem. That's what experts in this field are calling Facebook zero. We've done a Thrive guide that's 5 ways that you can actually turn this to your advantage if you're a local church. One of the 5 ways is talking about Facebook groups. So if you want to go back and look at what the other 4 ways are, jump into that Thrive guide and it'll kind of walk you through my other main suggestions for churches. But groups was a major way to actually, if your church wants to avoid Facebook zero, where you post and nobody sees it, you actually want to post and get engagement, Facebook groups are a major, major way to approach that. And in Mark Zuckerberg's announcement of this big shift in 2018, he said, immediately you're going to start seeing 3 things: more posts from friends, more posts from families, and more posts from, can you guys fill in the blank? Groups. It was like friends, families, and groups. So Facebook has come out and said it. Mark has come out and said it. They've changed their mission statement around it. And so they are driving everything to push towards groups. So that's like when it was like the big aha for the local church, is if your church wants to continue to get interaction and engagement on social media, Facebook groups has to be a big part of your strategy. I, in a sense, like to call Facebook groups almost like the new page. I don't know if you guys remember about 3-4 years ago when if your church had a Facebook page and you were pretty active, you got a lot of engagement and traction, interaction, and now that almost has become replaced by Facebook groups. Groups, in a lot of ways, is the new page, and here's why: is because back in the old days, people would opt in. People would opt in to see your content by liking your page. That was like their way to say, hey, we want to see their content. Now, no longer does that really signify to Facebook that they actually want to see and engage with your content on a deeper level. But jumping into your Facebook group is now a way that it signals from this person to Facebook, hey, I'm interested. This is a community. This is a group that I'm interested in. So Facebook sees that almost like the new like. They've really discounted likes of a page, but if you join a group, now Facebook is saying, aha, is this person kind of joining this tight-knit community? So that's the big shift where like groups are like the new pages. I hope that that's coming across and making sense. And I apologize. A lot of these thoughts are just really kind of forming at this point. Like I said, it's kind of an early point in the conversation. So let's jump into these questions, because I think we're going to flesh out, okay, what does this mean for churches? And one of the things is, why should we even start a Facebook group? And that's the big thing. Why should we even start a Facebook group? So the big answer is this: it's the direction that Facebook is headed. If Facebook is going to be a major part of your strategy in reaching people, connecting with people, discipling people, building community, then groups needs to be a major part of that strategy. Facebook is moving that direction. So you're going to see a continual decline in the reach of your page, and you're going to see an increase in the engagement that you're going to get on groups. The other thing I would say to this is like a little bit of a marketing coaching aside here, and this would be my soapbox, is sometimes for your church and your marketing to get bigger, you actually need to get smaller. And I think Jesus is a great example of this. Yes, he came to save the world, but what was his strategy to save the world is he focused in a lot on a small group of people. Yes, he taught them there was a place for big events and the masses, but for really that to scale, in marketing, this is true of marketing, is that you have to sometimes focus in smaller if you want to get bigger. So I think churches sometimes make the mistake of, oh, we want to just reach everybody. We want to reach the masses. We want to talk to all 5 billion people out there. And honestly, you need to start in a lot of times focusing smaller. And sometimes it starts with developing a really tight-knit group that can take on the world. That's what Jesus did. And sometimes you need to go, yes, we want to go big with our marketing, but a lot of times that means going small with your marketing. You need to get, tight-knit communities going around. Like, for example, one of the best things a pastor could do right now is block out 2 hours of your time and just text people in your church. Hey, praying for you today, buddy. Thank you so much for volunteering in the kids area. It's making a big difference. Like, if you want to go big in your marketing, focus in small. I mean, I'm doing this personally. This last week, I've texted back and forth with over 300 church leaders. And I'm telling you, it's a shift. So sometimes I just throw that out there. I know that's a little bit of a rabbit trail, but sometimes we get focused on, we just want to send out tens of thousands of mailers and we want to do, Facebook posts that go viral. And the answer to that a lot of times is focusing in small. So all that to say is, why should you start a Facebook group? If you want to continue to reach people, and you want to develop a tight-knit community that can help you reach more people, disciple people, and accomplish your vision, mission of the church, I think Facebook groups are a great way to do that. The next question is, how do we promote our group? So that's a great question, because sometimes you have this group out there and you're like, how do we even get people in it? Let me explain a couple things first. I'm going to tie in another question here because I think it's really important. Is when you start a group, I highly recommend that you start small. Don't start a whole bunch of groups. I recommend you start one major group for your entire church and you start small with a core group of people. Why is this so important? Because a lot of times, again, you'll hear a video like this and like, oh, we need to start a group. So boom, we have a group, we have a big announcement, we have an email, and now you have a disaster on your hands. Or we should do groups, and now every ministry has a group, every campus has a group, everybody has a group, everybody gets a group, and now you've got a disaster on your hands. So don't blame this on me. You need to start small and start with a core group of people. And why is this so important? You need to develop the culture of your group, because culture wins every day of the week. And it's really, really important for a healthy Facebook group, because if you don't have a strong culture in your group goes haywire quickly. It becomes multi-level marketing. It becomes something that you never intended it to be or wanted it to be. So you need to start small, get your strategy in place, and start developing your culture. What are you trying to accomplish with your group? What is your strategy going to be with your group? What is your rhythms going to be? What is this going to look and feel like? What does a healthy group look like to you? And that's how you need to start. Don't start just dumping everybody in there. Okay, so start small, develop your culture. Let me tell you a little story. So just kind of illustrates this point. So every time I drink a water bottle, I take off the wrapper. Why do I take off the wrapper? Because it signifies that this is my water bottle. Nobody else takes off the wrapper. So if I see a water bottle around the house or at an office or whatever, I realize, okay, this was my water bottle, because I tend to leave it around the house. And Amy and I actually, my wife Amy and I, we used to get into a lot of arguments because there'd be like a water bottle sitting there. It's like, who wasted the water? Was that you? Was that me? It was like, from now on, I'm taking off the wrapper, the water bottle. Now you're asking, why is he telling us this crazy story about the water bottle? Why? And I tell you this because the other day I asked my little girl, Caitlin, she's in 3rd grade. She's incredible. I asked her, will you bring me a water bottle? Caitlin out of the pantry. And so she comes over, and what's awesome is on her way over to give me the water bottle, without me even asking, she ripped off the label and handed me the water bottle. And I didn't even have to ask her to do that. And I was like, why did you do that? And she's like, because Dad, you always take off the labels. Here's your water. I was like, oh, thank you so much. But it taught me an important lesson about culture. And it's this: if you develop a culture and then people observe that, they naturally start to understand what you're trying to accomplish. So if your group has a strong culture to begin with, And it's not a place for self-promotion, and it's not a place for multi-level marketing, and it's not a place for essential oils or whatever is going on, or inappropriate behavior or gossip or backbiting. When people come in and they observe the culture of their group, they're much more likely to understand what you're trying to do and go along with it. So that's why I highly recommend the water bottle principle. Start your culture first. Get that figured out. Figure out if your church even wants to utilize this tool. Once you're like, man, this is great. We're having good community. We've got the rhythms. We understand how this works. Now you're ready to promote your group like crazy. So let's get back to promoting your group. A couple things that you can do once you create your group is you can tie it to your Facebook page. So we've got a help article. You can do this on socialchurch.co, socialchurch.co, but you can link your page to your group. So anybody going to your page can also see your group. You're also going to want to name your group something easy to find because in your search, Facebook oftentimes, if people are searching for your church, will actually show your group before your page sometimes. So you can set it up so you can get some organic traffic. And then you can do the kind of the obvious things. You can do a big announcement in your church. You can do a big email out to your church. Again, when you're ready. I wouldn't recommend doing this until you're ready. You can go on your Facebook page and talk about how you've launched a group. You can have your small group leaders send an update to them via text that you now have a group. Would you let your small group know, or your Sunday school classes? So it's just like anything else that you would promote, whether it's video announcement from the pulpit. One of my favorite ways to do this is when you start getting more advanced with your group and start having more fun with it, is when your leadership and maybe your lead pastor starts to drop mentions about things going on in the group. Meaning maybe your lead pastor went live in the group that week, and then on Sunday morning they're saying, yeah, we had such a blast. I was live in our Facebook group this week. And then you just subtly clued everybody in that you have a group. So, I mean, I've done that in this video, in this live. I mentioned the church marketers group a couple times, subtly mentioning, hey, guess what, guys? We have a group specifically for church marketers. So there's a lot of ways that you can promote your group, get your group out there. And I would say in a lot of ways too, your group will organically grow if it's a good, healthy group. And you've seen this, guys, if you're in the church space, if you like the church communications groups out there, they're so helpful. They're incredibly helpful. And those grow because people are searching out resources to help. So if your group is helpful, a lot of times people will seek you out, and then you'll have people, even that word of mouth in and amongst your church saying, hey, did you see, that funny video in the group? Oh no, we have a group, so do some fun stuff, do some funny things, do some creative things, put some content. Here's a big tip. Put some content that is only available from your church inside your group. A lot of times churches will take the same content and put it on every platform. And then what you find is there's no real reason for them to follow you on those specific platforms. So in a marketing best practice, ideally, if you can put unique content that's unique to that platform, it gives people a great reason to jump into that platform because they know that there's unique content there. So do some things exclusive to the group. So the next question is it better to go live in groups or pages? And that's a great question. Facebook Live is huge. It's one of the other 5 things we talked about in the Facebook Thrive Guide for churches. And so do you want to go live in the group or live in the page? And I think it all goes back to that marketing strategy of how you're going to use your page in your group. Right now, I recommend for your page, you look at it as your public facing page. So another question on here is, should you delete your page and just go all in on a group? Absolutely not. Don't delete your page. Go through the Thrive Guide. Your page can still have a ton of engagement. In fact, I'll show you, I think, the tips and the strategy that your church can use to actually get a lot more engagement than you've ever got. So don't delete your page. You're going to need your page to run Facebook ads. So don't delete your page. And I recommend have your page. So when you have a piece of content that's more public facing, it's more for the visitor, the person who's not a part of your tight-knit community, you go live and talk about that on your page. And then if you have a family talk or an announcement or something that's for your community, go live in the group. And I know this gets a little bit tricky because there's some things we want to do for our family that we also want other people to be invited. And I think Christy had this question of like, if you have like a closed group and you have an event or a piece of content, people can't share that outside, which I'll get into the details here in a second of why I really recommend a closed group and not an open group, not a secret group, but a closed group on the privacy settings. And I think right now that's the trickiest part of a Facebook group is if you have a closed group, you really people outside of it can't see it. And I think that's actually smart. So what you want to do is when you have announcements, because here's my biggest pet peeve for churches, Facebook and social media is it's become a megaphone for announcements as opposed to a coffee table for a relationship. They view social media as their stage as opposed to their foyer where they're having friendships and dialogue. So what churches are notoriously bad at doing is they have an announcement, men's event, women's something cool. So they go on their page and they have this one-way announcement, not a conversation, not engagement. And I'm telling you, Facebook is just going to continue to kill those things. I recommend going into your group and having your ministry leaders go live. Have your women's team go live in the group, have fun, talk about what's coming up, and then you create a public-facing post that's more targeted towards why somebody outside your church should care about that women's event. And then when you're talking live in your closed group, mention, hey, after we're done here with this live video, would you jump over to our page and share and tag a friend in the comments? Now, don't put that in your post, okay? Don't put that in your post on your page. Talk about it live in your closed group. But you're going to tell your friends, tag people, share that post, engage it. As soon as we're done here with the live, go do that over on our page. And that's how you cross promote between your closed group and your public page. So the answer is, should you go live on your page and your group? The answer is yes. It just depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I think more and more churches need to go live in their group to do all the housekeeping, announcement things, all the stuff, the internal communication that I think we're bad at doing just on our page to begin with. So the next question is, what can groups be used for? So I really want, here's where I want to do a little bit of dialogue back and forth with you. I want you guys to take a second. Is your church currently using groups? And if so, how is your church currently using Facebook groups? So I'm going to take a time out here for a second, drink some water, and I want you guys to put real quick, because I want people who aren't yet in it starting groups to see everything that possible that a church could use a Facebook group for. So this is creative time. Turn to your neighbor and tell them, how is your church using groups? Or if your church isn't using groups, just put, we're not using groups yet. And then I'll throw out some ideas as well. So Scott's saying that they have a ton of them. And yes, closed groups, Tony is doing them primarily for announcements. I think that's a great starting place. Elizabeth saying prayer requests. I think that's a great one. And let me just say this real quick. Here's a leadership side note. I love to throw out a leadership principle anytime I can. And that's, if you see your church and you're fighting against something in your church, whether that's in a group or in your church culture, realize that it might be an opportunity to adjust your ministry. So if you realize, man, in our group is just totally being used for prayer requests, you might realize, man, our people need an outlet to have people praying for them and submitting prayer requests. So sometimes something that might be like, man, we didn't realize our group was just going to turn into, a prayer request every hour. Then you need to come up with a system for how your church can approach and facilitate that need that's arising in your church, like prayer requests. One of the favorite ways I love this, and you'll see this in some of the really healthy groups out there, is they will make a post specifically about that topic, and then they will encourage comments on that post. So what you might do is a Wednesday post every single week about things that you're praying for, and then people can put their prayer requests and their praise reports in that post. Once a month, if you see, man, our group is really struggling, it's becoming a whole bunch of self-promotion, maybe once a month what you do is do a post of like, hey, we've got a lot of cool business leaders in our church. Tell us more about your business on this post. And so if somebody creates a post about their business, all you say is, hey, go over and add that to the comment to our business post, okay? So you can do some things strategically when you find you get some sideways energy in your group to go and drive that to an intentional system and culture that you've set up. But man, we've had a ton of comments coming through here. Some of the favorite things that can be done with groups is obviously you could have an entire group for your church. You could do, like it was mentioned, you can do some prayer times. You can go live in there. You could have your worship team do a midweek worship song. It's one of my favorite things to do. People are struggling throughout the week. They need a boost of encouragement. Man, do a worship song together. You can have your pastor do Monday leftovers in the group. So if your pastor preached a sermon and they had 3 points, typically in their study time, they probably had closer to 6 points. Well, take those extra 3 points you had to cut out, go live in your group and talk more about the points that you weren't able to share in your sermon because of time. So you can do that in your group. You can do leadership development in your group, where if you find yourself, man, we want to do X, Y, or Z at our church, we just don't have time, or we just can't get everybody together, there should be warning bells going off. What if we did that in our group? What if you did small group training, leadership training, kids ministry training, volunteer onboarding, hospitality team training in your group? There's so many ways that churches are using groups out there, not just for, announcements. Another thing I highly recommend, and this would be for social media in general, including your page, your groups, your other channels, is I would say if you're doing a series or book studies, for every series that you do, come up with what is your unique approach going to be on social media. So if you're doing a series on, we just did New Year was a big deal. So normally everybody's kind of doing the get back to the basics, or, let's set the goal that we want to. Let's set our goals and prayer and discipleship, all that stuff, all that. And you guys know that. So you could think in your planning meeting, what is this going to look like for our page? And what if this is going to look like for our group? So what if for this series, we did some fun stuff into the group that was unique to this series, so it kept that conversation going in and around the series. So our church just did this theme called Run to Win, okay? So you could take those each week, and you could do the Monday leftovers with the pastor. You could do midweek worship to help people continue to worship. You could do a Bible plan together. Instead of doing like maybe your Bible and fasting on your page, do it inside your group. You could even do fun stuff. Like if your theme is Run to Win, what if every week you had a race between 2 people in your church at the local high school? I mean, do some silly stuff and let's see who would win this race. And everybody, you could do a poll, like who's going to win, Ryan or Adam? And that's a race. Who thinks? And then you go live with the race. Because, we've done some fun stuff. We've done like Easter trivia in the Church Marketers group. And you have to look at your social media. It doesn't always have to be super serious. So, man, have some fun with it. There's so many ways. And check out all these comments, so many ways that you guys can use groups to get engagement, interaction, conversation, discipleship in your group. The next question, what content goes on the page and what content goes in the group? I think we talked about that a little bit. I would see it as your page is public facing. That's where you're trying to really engage and start developing relationships with people that you don't have relationships with. So you're using that more for Facebook ads, for conversation starters. You can stream your services. Anything you can do to start relationships with people who don't come to your church yet goes on your page, and in your group is more the tight-knit community stuff goes on inside your group. Should I start with one or many groups? I highly recommend starting with one. We kind of talked about that, tied that in on why. In general, I think in marketing, you want to have whatever it is going gangbusters before you start to multiply. And this is also true. I did a whole bunch of capital campaigns, lived in that world for a long time. And when a church is just busting at the seams and they've got kids everywhere and they've got to put out extra seating in their auditorium and they've got overflow, it's so much easier to multiply and to raise money at that point when everybody can look around and see that there's a need to multiply. The same is also true with your marketing and things like your Facebook groups. I would start and get to the point where it's just like people, when they say, man, there's so much conversation going on in our group, it's just crazy. I don't know if I can keep up with it. that might be the time where you need to multiply. And side note, along the way, you need to be developing leaders and volunteers. So when you multiply, you can multiply a healthy group. It's like doing multi-site. So if you were a church, you wouldn't launch, probably not. There's maybe churches out there that have done this, but you're probably not going to launch with 10 campuses. Why? Because you don't have the volunteers and the leadership infrastructure to sustain 10 campuses. So 9 of those 10 campuses are going to die because there's no leadership there. There's no volunteers. There's no conversation and energy. That's the parallel with groups. If you start all these groups and you don't have the infrastructure yet, you're not going to have the engagement and conversation going on. So those groups can die and not get the results that you want. So I would start small, develop it out, get the conversation going like crazy, and then multiply into maybe it's time to start a student group or a men's group or a worship group, whatever it is. That would be my recommendation and why kind of the leadership thought behind that. Next question, should our group be open, closed, or secret? I am a big fan of a closed group. And I know a lot of pastors, their initial reaction is, well, that's going to keep us from really getting everybody involved. And again, marketing secret here. When you create a closed community, it actually becomes more attractive for people, not less attractive, okay? So if your goal is we want to go bigger, faster, I actually think a closed group can do that. What's also nice about a closed group, in my opinion, is for a church specifically, it gives some level of privacy because this group is going to be some internal family communications. Now, you have to treat it like everybody can see this, but for prayer requests and things like that, some level of confidentiality, I actually like it. I think you're going to have more people open up about things that they're needing help with or things that they need prayer for when there's a level of closeness. And this is a community that people really, you need to be involved at the church, going to the church to get into this group. So I know that creates a little bit of a problem with sharing, but I actually think it can be helpful because you can talk in your closed group and leverage that to cross promote for stuff going on in your page. What I recommend as far as setting up your settings when you create a group, I like a closed privacy. I like to make it where people have to answer a couple questions to get in the group. And then I like it where a moderator has to approve a post before it goes live. And I would recommend developing some volunteers and moderators to help out with a group, especially if you're a larger church wanting to do this strategy. You're kind of developing a team of people that can help out with this. Now, for the church marketers group, here, let me give you an example and explain why we do this and why your church might want to do this. One is we ask 3 questions. We ask what church you're a part of because we want to know that you're legit. We ask for an email and we ask for the kind of the consent that you're not going to come in and spam the group. So this will look different for a church, but here's why I think this is important because we talk about this in marketing, the difference between owning a property and renting a property. So I'm building this church marketers group. I spend a ton of time in there and energy, and we have about 2,500 church leaders in there. And tomorrow, Facebook could shut that group down. If Facebook shuts that group down tomorrow and I don't have a way to get a hold of these people, like I've built all my energy on the sand foundation, on rented property, not property that I can control. And that is a loser approach when it comes to marketing. So to get in our group, I want to know that you're legit. I want to know what church you're a part of, and I want your email address because I want to be able to get a hold of you if something happens. Also, this becomes strategic in marketing is when there's something major going on in the group, I need to get a hold of the church marketers and email them about what's going on in the group. And this is true of all of social media. And I don't have time to get into this, but the best marketers actually are really cross-promoting their social strategy. So we did this here when we were about to go live. We sent out an email. So your church can do that as well. So, and I would encourage you to do that. So I like to put parameters to get in the group. I want some contact information. So if your church is doing something big in your group, you can drive people there. It can also keep people active in your group because if people maybe go a couple weeks without engaging in your group, now they're not going to maybe see your group. So when you have another way to get a hold of them, you can drive them back into your group, get that engagement again for something big that's going on in your group. That's why I approach it like that in the church marketers group. So I would recommend, I think that you want a way to screen people getting into your group. You want, one of the other questions is who should we let in? And I like, if you're talking about one big closed group, I recommend to let in um, people who are legitimately connected to your church. And now this could be a person who came for the first time and maybe loves it. And you can check out their profile and they're here in Kansas City and they look legit, then I would put them into the group in that way. The other reason I like moderating the comments was another thing I mentioned, is because sometimes if you just allow it where anybody can post, it can become the wild, wild west. So I say, hey, only maybe moderators can post. And if somebody else posts, an admin has to approve it. I think that can keep a little control on it and make sure it's not getting out of crazy. And so let's say if your church has a closed group and you're seeing like a ton of prayer requests come in, and maybe you're saying, hey, you just have a moderator message those people back and say, hey, would you add your prayer request in the comments of this post? Instead of creating unique posts for every prayer request, you have one post each week that's about prayer requests and praise reports, and you drive your moderators to say, hey, would you add that comment on this post? Or if you have a ton of posts come in, you can have moderators reply back and say, hey, we've had a ton of posts come in. We're going to publish your post, but it may be next week, just a heads up. So you can do some things like that. Every church is going to be different, but that's why I recommend and how I would recommend setting that up. The next couple questions, kind of technical ones. Can you link a group to a page? Absolutely. You just need to either Google it or go to socialchurch.co and look at that tip of the week. Can a post or a page post in a group? Yes, a page can be, once you connect a page to a group and set that page up as an admin, you can now post as your church page in your group, and you can reply to comments as your page in your group, which is super cool because it allows you to do something like more of a church official, as opposed to maybe a specific pastor doing that or a volunteer doing that. They can post as the page. Should I get rid of our page and just go with a group? Absolutely not. I think you're going to want to do both. How do we keep people from spamming the group? I think it goes back to developing that strong culture, setting up your moderators and your admin. I also, just another little strategy that I do, I've created a 5-minute video about the Church Marketers group, about what the group is for, what we do in the group. And then it gives you, I encourage people to leave a comment to tell us more about them. And so that's the other reason why I get their email, is because I direct them from the email to check out the video. So what it's called norming your group. So you have a way to explain what this group is all about and what are the ground rules for your group. So you can do something like that where you have a video, you can pin that video to the top for a while. You can have a part of your process where you email out in the welcome to your such and such church group. You're in now. Check out this video that explains more about what we do in the group, why we have a group, and then let us know more about you. We'd love to get to know you in the comments to this video. So that's another thing I do, and I think that helps keep people from spamming the group, because you've gone ahead and you've set the ground rules for the group. So you can put that in your group description, you can put that in a video, you can put that in a pinned post, you can put that in your header for your group. But there's a lot of ways to prevent spamming. You can limit where nobody can comment except unless approved by a moderator. So that is a legitimate concern. But I think there's a lot of ways around that. So I've got one more question. I know I've thrown a lot out at you guys at this point. I've just kept throwing and throwing. What kind of questions that you guys have that we haven't covered yet? And then I want to jump into this last question while those are coming in. And I might get my phone here just so I can see the questions better. But yeah, everybody's like, I'm off to make groups. The groups are coming. So the last question is this: will a group take up a ton of time? And I would be sensitive to this because there's a lot of churches, we talk with a lot of pastors of anywhere from 25 people to 150 people that do everything. There are a lot of ones I'm texting back and forth like, hey, I'm on the way to the hospital. I work a full-time job. How do I have time for a group? And here's my major soapbox, and you could go through the volunteers course in Church Marketing University, but you're going to need to empower other people to help do this. That is the answer we find in the Bible to begin with, is our job as leadership is develop other people up to do the work of the ministry. And so I think you want to develop other people. And I would even say this, there's some larger churches um, that you're looking at maybe even hiring a communications staff or a social media coordinator. And my encouragement to you is hire somebody that can develop teams, not make posts. Let me say that again. Hire somebody that can develop teams, not develop posts. A third time, hire somebody that can develop teams, not develop posts. If you can have somebody that can develop volunteer teams of photographers, writers, copywriters, video editors, designers, website developers, digital hospitality people, digital connect centers, I'm telling you, you'll go much further faster. So volunteers really will help you in a ton of ways to facilitate the ministry that goes on in something like a Facebook group. And the question is, will it take a ton of time? Yes and no. Yes, in that you are going to put a lot of time, strategy, and intentionality behind it. The other side is, I actually think it will be effective. So you're going to have a lot more conversation and engagement. And isn't that what you wanted to begin with? Because a lot of times pastors and church leaders will ask, well, how do I get all this conversation and engagement? And then once they get it, they're like, well, this just drains all my time and energy. Well, didn't you want all the conversation and engagement so you can start developing relationships, discipleship, ministry, new people? Isn't that what you're doing this for? So in a lot of ways, yes, it will take time because I think it will be effective. Now, here's the other side note to do is when you start doing things strategically in a group, it will multiply your time because you can do ministry to many versus one-on-one. So you might say, hey, this week I've got 5 counseling appointments and I'm doing 2 premarital counseling appointments. Well, what if you took that and thought about your group different? What if you went into your group once a week and did a counseling appointment in your group? Okay. So now you could virtually start to, and maybe this is a terrible idea and it probably is, but I want you to think differently. Like where you can look at your group as maybe some of the responsibilities that you're doing like one-on-one that take up a ton of your time. Could you do those one-to-many inside a closed group where you're helping disciple, develop, coach, develop multiple people at once as opposed to doing that one-on-one? So in a lot of ways, if you do it strategically, it will multiply your time back. But yes, it will take up a lot of time, or it could. So, but I think that's the reason why you got into ministry, was to start relationships with people. Ministry flows out of relationships, and relationships take time. And a Facebook group is just one avenue that gives you a chance to develop relationships. So I'd be lying to you if I told you it wasn't going to take your time. So let's go through some of these questions. One is there a way to integrate small groups? Yes, like small groups can have a group. Our small group has more of a Facebook Messenger group chat. I think we found that more effective for us. So there is ways you can integrate small groups or have groups for small groups, or you can have them do Messenger chat. I don't think you want to get it out of control. I would beta test that with a couple groups. I think it would be more wise to have a group for your small group leaders. I think that might be a more wise strategy to start off with. So when you want to do a training for your small group leaders, you go do the training virtually in the group. When there's something you need to announce to your small group leaders, you announce it in the group. And if people want to ask questions, have conversation, all that can happen in the group. There are ways that you can tie groups together. You can feature groups on top of your group. So if your church has more than one group, you can tie those all together on top of your group so everybody can kind of see what groups your church have. Matthew's asking, what should you name your group? Right now for Summit Park Church, our page is named Summit Park Church and our group is named Summit Park Church as well. You could, if you want to add a little bit of delineation, you might just add the word group on that at the end of it, Summit Park Church Group. Whatever the name of your church and group, I think is a great way to start. I wouldn't make it complicated. I'd make it really straightforward. But that's a good question. Can I start a group and edit it without being published publicly? Yes, you can start a group. I have a group that's like my tester group. So I do some technical testing. I do Facebook Lives. I'll post links in there to see how that they populate, what image they show. I'll use that to debug. So you can have a secret group and mess with it, get everything set up, and then open that up to a closed group as well. Secret groups are really tricky. They're really hard to get people in, and they're really hard for people to find them. So just know that the case. But yes, you can kind of get a group going, keep it private. You could keep it secret for a while and just manually invite people in there to get it started, to build it out, to get your cover photo, to get, you can add files in groups. And other things you can do with groups I didn't talk about. Functionally, Facebook is pouring more time and energy to give you insights, statistics, engagement statistics, demographic statistics. You can add files. I love taking polls in groups. So if you're launching new services, what service are you coming? Polls are awesome, where you can have people, so you can do data finding in groups. But I didn't mention all those technical things that you can do in groups. There's a lot of technical things that you can do in groups. So let me see what else. Can Facebook groups have custom or easy URLs like pages? Yes, I'm pretty sure you can set the URL of your group. Like I think ours is like Church Marketers. So yes, I'd have to and typically I end up forgetting how you did that, and you just Google like, how do I get a vanity URL for my Facebook group? But I think you just go under settings and you can set it up if nobody has that group yet. That's the other thing that a lot of churches face is if you don't start a group for your church, unfortunately, somebody probably will. Okay, so then you can have a real problem because now you've got this unofficial group out there with an admin that has gone rogue. And so sometimes it's good just to start a group so you have an official group, because that can be a disaster. Scott's asking the best way to build engagement. I would do fun stuff in your group, Scott, and I would do stuff only that's exclusive to your group, and I would make it an extension of what you've already got going on in your church. So do some fun, crazy stuff in the group, because that's going to drive people to want to be a part of that group. Polls is a fun way to do engagement. Facebook Lives is a fun way to do it. Do volunteer highlights. Pick one volunteer. If you're having a sermon series about volunteering at your church, every week do a volunteer highlight into the group. If you're trying, you could highlight your kids ministry. Maybe your kids do funny skits. Well, go live and have your skit team go into the group and do their funny skit. Have your worship team do live worship. Start conversations. Have people in your church leadership go live in the group around a topic that you guys can dialogue in and around. Like, hey, we talked about marriage on Sunday, so I'm going to go live and give you 20 date night ideas and do that in your group, and then have people, what other date night ideas do you guys have? That's going to increase engagement, dialogue. Then come back and have people post photos from their date in the group and what idea that they went with. Was it fun? Did they have a blast? Like, again, sometimes I think in the church world we get too churchy without seeing the potential of having fun and going on an adventure with people that extends the life of the content that you talked about on Sunday. So I would have fun with that. Do you set up groups from your Facebook page? That is a good question. It seems like Facebook is always changing how you set it up. I think you might have to set it up as a person and then connect it officially to your page next, and then you make your page an admin of the group, I think is how it works. And then once your page is an admin, it like connects the dots. So socialchurch.co has some articles on that, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Some of those technical things, Facebook is always changing that, and so a month from now you might be able to do it, but I think that's how it works. So man, there's so many good stuff, but what I'll try to do, because I think I've thrown so much out at you guys at this point, is whether you're watching the replay or you're live, keep throwing the comments below. I try to always come back and get to the comments as much as I can. And if I don't reply in the comments, I'll take note of it and probably answer it in the next piece of content that we do next. Let me also throw out there too, this is #FreeFebruary for Church Marketing University. We have 30 courses. One of the courses we currently have is all about social media. We have an Easter course. We have a Facebook ads course. So if you just go to churchmarketinguniversity.com, right up top, you can start a free trial all of February and get access to all the courses that we have, all the downloads, It's totally and completely free. So if you want to go deeper, check out Free February. Your team can get access. So if you sign up for login, you can share that across your entire team. That's how we roll with Church Marketing University. So hopefully that helps you in time for Easter and your big spring pushes as well. But we're having a ton of fun in there. You're also welcome to get in the Church Marketers group and then check out the Social Church Thrive Guide. That's on Church Marketing University as well under the articles, and I put a link here below as well. So we talked about groups today. There's 4 other main things that your church needs to do in 2018 if you really want to go big with social. So that's in the Thrive Guide. But man, you guys have been awesome. So it's so much fun visiting. I love this aspect of the body of Christ, because with businesses, they get these ideas and they hold them secret. Like, we don't want to tell each other. But with the church, we can all come together and say, hey, this is what's working. This is what's working great for us. And we can learn from one another. That's a huge advantage that the body of Christ has, and that we can go ahead, move forward, expand the kingdom, reach people, and disciple people for the long haul. And so one last little note too, if you're leading into Easter, we have an Easter course called Rethinking Easter. We've got about 4,000 church leaders in there now. And man, people are just loving that. I uploaded, if you're in Rethinking Easter, we uploaded like 5 new documents in the download section. So like there's an Excel planning checklist. There's a whole bunch of other PDFs. There's some done for you email promotions, done for you text message promotions from Tyler Smith at Texan Church. Church Brand Guide has a planning grid for your branding and your promotions. So much good stuff. So if you're in there, go check out the download section. Evan Cox is also working on a Cliff Notes version of Rethinking Easter as well. That should be ready by the end of February. So if you just want the Cliff Notes version, that will be in the downloads as well. So, man, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much. If this was helpful to you, would you just hit the like and love a little bit? I don't often ask for this, but sharing this content, I think, will really help, whether you just hit the share button or just tag somebody who's a part maybe of your church or another church leader in ministry and say, hey, I found this valuable. You might want to check it out. That would be a huge blessing to me and really be awesome. So hashtag Free February. If you guys have any questions or watching the replay, keep putting them below and our team will try to answer as many possible. You guys are awesome. Have a great Tuesday. I might go get me some coffee now. God bless, guys.